I feel like talking about painting today. I want to document my thought process around how to start painting. So I consider myself a relatively young painter. I've been painting for only a few years. I feel like my understanding about painting in general has increased significantly, and that's because I realized that painting and drawing are two very different things. So drawing is not painting and painting is not drawing. I mean, this statement seems like a very obvious statement, right? But this wasn't that obvious to me when I was starting to learn how to paint, mainly because the instruction that was given to me related painting to drawing in a very strong way. In fact, I'm sure you've heard this advice: make sure your drawing is correct before you proceed with the painting, right? I'm sure you've heard this before because this is the advice that's given to young painters all the time by instructors and art teachers and artists with a lot of painting experience. This advice is basically propagated in all art schools. I know this because, I used to paint at the League, and I heard that all the time at the League as well. And I know why this instruction is given to young painters. The intent here is to simplify things for you and me, right? But sometimes simplification leads to confusion down the line and a lot of issues down the line. And this is exactly how I experienced the whole thing. I was very confused and very frustrated with the whole approach, and I'll go into the details of that in a little bit. The turning point for me was the realization that painting and drawing are two very different things. Take a sip of this finally. And so as soon as I realized that painting and drawing are two very different things, I was able to let go of the idea that painting should be approached through the process of drawing. And that allowed me to basically develop my own painting process and allow me to kind of, in a very free way, develop as a painter. Okay. But before that, like any other young painter in the room, I would be married to the idea of starting a painting in the standard way through the process of drawing. And so I would spend a lot of time trying to get the outline of the model correct. I would spend a lot of time trying to get the outline of the background correct, as it relates to the model. But my outlines would be always incorrect, which was very strange because prior to picking up painting, I felt very confident about my drawing skills. I considered myself a pretty decent drawer. And so feeling like I can't draw all of a sudden was this really bizarre feeling, which I did not like at all. And so I started questioning this whole process, and I started thinking that, okay, painting may be difficult at the beginning, but it can't be that difficult. Why isn't drawing working out for me here? That's what everybody's doing. Why isn't this working for me? Through all these questions and through all these conflicts in my mind, I came to the realization that drawing and painting are two different things, and therefore I should really not be approaching painting through the process of drawing. I decided to announce it on Facebook. And so the main problem with the outline that I have is that at the end of the drawing process of the outline, I was left with this transparent frame. And the transparent frame was the cause of all my issues because there's no context within it. There was nothing for me to hook on in terms of trying to predict what should come next. What are the next steps? And so that's why every time I was trying to adjust the outline, I would be unsuccessful. And so I also realized that nothing around me is transparent. This is another very obvious statement, right? Of course, nothing around me is transparent. If this is so obvious, why are we instructed or taught to approach painting a model as if the model were transparent? Why are we instructed to look for lines when there are no lines? The only way I could get the outline correct would be probably if I traced the thing with the projector, or however people do it. I don't know, because I don't trace. And don't get me started on tracing, because if you trace, I know that your goals as a painter are very different than mine, and we can't be friends if you trace, okay? You will never see me trace because I feel like no one ever learns anything through the process of tracing. Outlines are transparent and nothing around me is transparent, and so painting the model as if the model were transparent no longer made sense to me, okay? And on the flip side of it, the model is made out of shapes and the background surrounding the model is made out of shapes. And so if the model is made out of shapes, why aren't we taught to paint the shapes right away as the first step? Some instructors would tell me, yeah, you know, painting is all about shapes, but then they would say you have to draw the shapes before you start painting. The problem I have here is the word drawing. It is a contradiction in my mind, because the instruction to draw the shapes implies that you have to look for lines where there are no lines. What you would call a line to me became context, is describing how all the adjacent shapes meet on the model or on the thing that surrounds the model. Every single shape has context within it, and every single shape is surrounded by context. A model posing in some kind of a setup is this loop of shapes and context that ends at the edge of the composition, okay? That thought process required significant adjustments to how I start painting. I ditched the whole idea of trying to draw the thing before continuing with the painting, because it was such a restricting idea. And instead, I decided to paint the shapes. So let me show you a few examples of what I'm describing so that you can better visualize what I'm talking about, because I do have the tendency to confuse people. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're sitting there and thinking, what is she talking about? So here is one example of a painting, and as you can see right away, there is no drawing involved here. What I'm doing is I'm painting the shapes in from the very beginning, and I'm able to do that because I have a brush at my disposal, and a brush is designed for painting, right? If a brush is designed for painting, why would I use it to draw? That also did not make sense to me anymore. What I use the brush for is painting, because that's what the brush was designed to do. And the brush can paint the shape because it's aggressive this way. I'm painting the shapes in, one shape next to another, right away. The concept of drawing here is totally eliminated. And this way, I never have to worry about losing a drawing. Like, you know, the concept of losing a drawing as you paint and worrying about losing a drawing, that has never been a problem to me since I changed my thought process radically. And so, because again, there is no such thing as drawing in the concept of painting. I can already tell how my painting is going to look like based on the first layer. I can also tell what type of adjustments I need to make in the layers that will follow. And it usually takes me 3 or 4 layers to complete the painting. And my thought process for each layer after the initial layer is exactly the same. I revisit the context, I analyze it again, and I ask myself, what is it about the context that I did right, and what is it that I did wrong? And I leave the things that I did right, but I paint over the things that I did wrong, that I maybe misinterpreted. I tend to start my paintings from the middle of the gesture, and it doesn't matter whether it's a live model, a human model, plant, or a bouquet of flowers. Every single type of gesture has a middle. And when I say the middle, I don't mean the middle of the composition or the middle of the page or the middle of the canvas. Instead, what I mean is the middle of the gesture. What I'm looking for is the distribution of the weight, and the distribution of the weight becomes my middle. And this is what I start with. I would expand from the middle of the gesture out. And again, that's regardless of what I'm painting. If I'm painting a bouquet of flowers, I would look for the middle of their gesture. This actually allows me to control the proportions better, because by applying and sizing the shapes correctly, my proportions are 99% correct most of the time. After I'm done with the first layer, I know exactly what needs to be adjusted, if there is anything that needs to be adjusted. And yes, there are a lot of things that need to be adjusted with the first layer. It's a lot easier for me to proceed from that first layer and finish my painting correctly without frustration. I'm not worrying about not getting the drawing right. I'm not limited by some kind of preconceived notions that a drawing has to be correct in order for me to proceed. There's no such concept in this approach. So this approach also requires me to pre-mix the paint. And pre-mixing the paint is a very important part of my process. It allows me to analyze the context that I mentioned, that I have been describing in detail before I actually start painting. And I usually spend like 30 or 40 minutes on trying to understand what I'm looking at, and based on my understanding, mix the paint. This means that before I actually start applying or painting the shapes onto the canvas, I have all the context laid out on my palette. I'm trying to absorb all the information that's available to me right away. Again, I'm not dividing my process into step 1, step 2, step 3. I'm going after all the information at once. I am mixing the colors, I am mixing the values, I'm mixing the temperature, I'm mixing the air, I'm mixing the space, I'm mixing everything, all the context. So I'm not wasting my energy on unnecessary steps. Again, trying to draw some transparent outline while nothing around me is transparent is like a wasted energy. It's wasted time. Trying to look for lines that don't exist, okay, is a waste of energy. With the approach that I'm describing, there is no wasting energy. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I'm actually quite efficient. I'm able to finish a painting relatively quickly. I feel free. I don't feel restricted by anything. This approach, I can't begin to tell you how much freedom I gained with this approach. It just completely transformed my painting. Starting a painting that way requires a certain concentration level. So when I start a new painting, I can't have any distractions around me. So even music becomes a noise when I try to start a painting, because the approach, while very efficient, it does require a high level of concentration, because from the very beginning, I want to get as much information correct as possible. Okay. At this point, this is the best explanation I can provide as to my current process. If you are a young painter, or even if you're, a painter with a lot of experience, and you're still have trouble with the drawing phase, and you find yourself correcting your drawings as you go through the painting, as you progress through the painting, then I would suggest that maybe you revisit your painting process and see if there are any improvements you need to implement, or maybe consider a different approach. And by saying that, I'm not suggesting that you copy my way of starting a painting. I'm just showing you that sometimes you have to go in the opposite direction in order to make progress. Now I feel like I can paint anything, anywhere, anytime. I mean, imagine me, painting this painting behind me through the process of drawing. I would go insane trying to outline every leaf. I'm not afraid of starting a new painting. I'm not exhausted by just by the idea of, oh my God, I have to start this painting, and first I have to go through this drawing phase, which I hate because it's always inaccurate and I waste a lot of time. I never have that. I no longer have that. I used to have that, but I no longer have that problem. Whenever I'm about to start a painting, I feel excited. I feel curious. Okay, what am I dealing with today? Pre-mixing the paint also taught me appreciate what I'm looking at more, because I'm able to see the beauty of all these very intricate relationships between shapes and the air and the space that surrounds the shapes, right? Everything seems very beautiful when I prepare the paint for the painting. So with that, I think I'm going to end this because I'm going to paint today. I'm painting a fabric, which I'll show you later. So I'll talk to you